Welcome to the Croc Podcast.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Here is your host, Dr. E.
Howdy, Croc Nation. Dr. Tommy and Ellie here with you with another Croc Podcast. On my right, in the computer world, in the internet, if I were to dive through my screen, I would be grabbing the neck of young, handsome, my bestie, my partner in crime, Angel Santana. Have faith, let it begin. Angel, can you see me through the computer world?
I'm telling you, I think we have learned that we have aged like fine wine in the computer world, but as you put it best, we have the greatest faces for podcasting, not for video.
Yep, well, I have a perfect face for radio and podcasting for sure. But if you think about it, so the new Tron is coming out for all our science fiction friends. So the old Tron is that we get scooped up into the game world, and in the new one, the game world gets scooped up into our world. So this is kind of what we do in podcasting. We're basically science fiction, quantum mechanic, engineers. Would you not agree, Angel?
Absolutely. There's no words other than that. I agree 110%.
So to our cancer survivor thrivers out there, the weather's getting nice. It's staying light late. The weather's changing, as I said, and spring is in the air. The greenery in the Hudson Valley is gorgeous. And I can't wait to start a new podcast with you guys. It is absolutely so exciting for Angel and I. We actually have a comrade who's going to be our guest today. David Garcia is a personal friend. I consider him a brother in arms. David and I have been working together in the cancer center at Garnet Medical Center for 21 years. He's been a radiation therapist for over 30 years. There are so many different ways to describe David, but I'll see what I could do to embarrass him and do the best I can to give him all of the great adjectives that he deserves. So the first thing I think about David is family. So David, when he comes to work, he really bonds us. He's one of the great glues of the department, and makes us feel that we're all connected. And even though we are all connected, there are certain key people that really bring us together, and David happens to be one of them. He brings to the department such a great amount of intelligence and warmth and compassion and empathy for our patients, and his humor and just the way he walks around, and he gives everyone confidence. When we have bad days, he tries to pick us up. I also think about loyalty when I think about David. He is loyal to anybody that he is thought of to be his friend. I also think of David. I think of him. I think of the word service. He is a Marine veteran, and I always tell him how grateful I am for his service. I think of him also as a father and as a husband. He's the patriarch of his family, and I know his family fairly well, and I know that they adore him, and well deserved, because he is such a great example of being the leader of the family. He is quiet, but he is strong. And lastly, I think of with David, I just think of him as just a humor-filled gentleman. He's just a gentleman. And to give you an example, if we were one of those kind of organizations that had employees of the month, he's been working with us from 2004. I think David's face would be on pretty much every month, maybe 2 months that maybe he had an off 2 months, but for the last, X amount of years, 21 years, his face would be on that employee of the month. Angel, I know you don't know David, obviously, as well as I do, but you do know about the radiation oncology department. You could definitely see that as being true.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I think our viewers and our listeners in Croc Nation world, Citizens United to Overcome Cancer, understand that you're only as good as your leader. And what you guys have all put into place over there is a team. It's a team environment. And as somebody who's walked down that hallway, You feel this energy, this just really good feeling that people are there for a purpose, and they're not almost there just for the paycheck. They're there to help patients, and you can see it in the smiles in patients when they're leaving. Even if we even know if they're having been given bad or good news, you wouldn't even know.
Well, I appreciate those words, Angel, but I bet you our survivor thrivers are thinking, well, that's really cool. You guys are having one of your colleagues on. You've embarrassed them enough. So, all right, let's get on with the podcast already. And I will start the podcast by just saying the following. I use the word father. I use the word leader. I use the word friend. I use the word loyal. I use the word service. I use the word excellence. But there are two words that I didn't use, and that's the reason why we have David on today, and that's survivor thriver. So, David, having being at one end of the accelerator for over 30 years, goes to his doctor. They draw a PSA level. It's a bit on the high side. They do some testing, they do a biopsy, and they walk into the room and they have to tell a cancer provider that they have cancer. Furthermore, David has to take that information and he has to break it to his family. Furthermore, David then has to make a great decision on what to do. And furthermore, he decides to have his treatment with us. So the purpose of today's podcast is really for our cancer providers out there. We are not vulnerable. I'm sorry, we are not invulnerable, to getting sick. We are not invulnerable to actually getting the disease that we fight against on a daily basis. And today's podcast is about how a cancer provider has to change roles and how that change affected him and affected those around him. So, Angel, let's welcome David Garcia.
How's everybody? So,
We're doing
Dr. E,
Yeah.
as you're talking and you're describing me, I'm looking around because I don't know who you're talking about because I have no idea. Everything you said is like, you know, sounds pretty good. I say I wish I knew who this guy was.
Well, you know what? The guy is the guy in the mirror, brother, because that's exactly who you are. And everybody knows that. And I hope you do know that, David. But without beating the stick any further, tell Angel and I and our Croc Nation about, that minute, because your PSA wasn't that high.
No.
And all of a sudden you start getting these tests and things are starting to get a little weird.
Right.
And then when Sam walks in the room and tells you what's going on, like, what did it feel like?
So let me just sort of lay the groundwork. I get my blood work drawn routinely, and my PSA is typically one of the things that gets drawn. So, literally, maybe 3 weeks before the screening that I went to, I had a normal PSA. It was literally zero, and then Jessica, um, a supervisor in the radiation therapy, she told me to go in for a screening, for the prostate screening that Garnet Health holds yearly, and she sort of is in charge of that. So I went. I took they did my blood work, and oddly, my PSA level went from 0 to like 10.7 within a matter of weeks, which was kind of odd. So, of course, Dr. Bobby was obligated to further do research. And so he ordered an MRI, which which showed nodules within the prostate. And then when I went back to see him, because he was going to do the biopsy, he said to also draw another PSA, which I did. And the day that I went to talk to him about the biopsy, my PSA levels were back to normal. So that was kind of odd, I thought. Anyway, but the biopsy showed that there was cancer cells in the nodules. And so I think that's when I spoke to you, Dr. E.
Yep.
And so we, and And then when I went back to see Dr. Borby, he sat down, he said, based on the biopsy, you have early stage prostate cancer, you know? So what went through my mind? I sat there and I tried to grasp the information he was giving me, because how many prostate patients have I spoken to and dealt with and told them that they're going to be okay, and now I'm giving that information, So the first thing that went in that I thought about was, how will I tell my wife and my children, you know? So actually, that night when I went to meet my wife at the supermarket, and she knew I had gone to see Dr. Borby. And as soon as I saw her, she looked at me and she sort of knew what the news was, you know. And she lovingly told me that we're gonna get through this, And then that we had to pick a time to actually speak to our daughters, you know, which we did in a couple of days later. We sat down with my two daughters, and we told them that what I was going through. And of course, because they don't know a lot of the cancer and treatments, they immediately thought that I was going into hospice. So,
Yeah.
so I had to explain to them that it's I'm going to be around for a little while longer. So a lot of tears were shed, and they're still very concerned though.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so that's how it went down.
David, when as somebody who has taken care of, I want to say probably over 1,000 prostate cancer patients in your career,
Hmm.
did that act in your favor? Did that help you sort of just think, hey, this is just something that men get, and there's treatments, and I have the ability to beat this? Did you have that confidence, or because now it was you, was there the panic that all survivor thrivers go through?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I was never in any time panicked. I've always had a peace about it. Um, because my number one, my dad also had prostate cancer. So I always thought in the back of my mind that this is a possibility, because he went through radiation therapy, maybe about 15, almost 20 years ago. So there was always that lingering thought that this is something I may have to deal with, you know. So, and like you had just mentioned, because I had worked with prostate cancer patients, I I I I I always had a piece that if I was to get diagnosed with this, that I would I would deal with it, the way I needed to deal with it, and things will be okay, you know.
So that's Angel, that's important because, like I said, I think that a lot of cancer providers might go the other route, but David felt very confident, and that's good. That's exactly what I was hoping to hear, but wanted to hear it from you. David, when it came to now the decision-making process, I mean, you had a cancer that could have gone many different ways. There were many different ways to skinning that cat, so to speak, and you were listening to all those different options. What would you say to men that are going through the process now of trying to make that decision? Not that what your decision would be their decision, but what were some of the thoughts going through your mind?
Well, um, I would tell, and it's funny that you would say that, because as I was going through the treatments, I was also treating a gentleman that had almost my same diagnosis. Numbers were the same as mine, and he was not dealing well with it, because I think the quality of life was a little worse for him because he had, for some reason, he went the route of a prostatectomy. And I always wondered why he did that because his numbers and my numbers were virtually the same.
Mhm.
And so he was angry about everything because of what was going on, what he was going through, the quality of life he was having because of the problems that came associated with his surgeries, So um, I got a chance to actually speak with him and explain to him what to expect and um, why he was experiencing some of the things he was, And I think basically he was just angry about what was going on with him, and he just needed. And I guess hearing me talk about um, what the things to expect gave him a lot of comfort, and so um, he calmed down and he was able to go through his treatments in a much better place.
I'm going to suspect, and then you tell me if I'm right or wrong, that this will actually strengthen your ability to be a cancer provider. I think that this is going to give you a perspective that, we all talk to cancer patients every day, and, we try to give them support, but it's not from the position of walking in their shoes. You walked in their shoes. Do you
Yeah,
believe that that will also empower you to give you a stronger bond with your patients?
absolutely. I mean, even now, because I'm 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 seeing it from the other end. You know,
Yeah,
um, I don't think I don't think any of the therapists have ever been in the actual room when the machine's on.
yeah, yeah,
So as because as you're laying on that table, you have nothing. You can do nothing but think about what's going on. And you're thinking about your life. You're thinking about your family. You're thinking about a lot of things going through your head as that beam is going around you and treating you. And one of the things that I'm thinking about was, you know, is this actually going to work?
yeah.
You know, and I'm sure many patients think the same thing. Is all this worth it, or because you know the side effects can be very harsh.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
and a
actually
lot.
that's actually a really good segue because
Yeah,
just to let our Croc Nation, our survivor thrivers know, David really worked right through treatment. So, he had to, fill his bladder and do all the things that was necessary to be prepared. And then he would be, I guess, the first or second patient that we would treat. And then he would go do what he had to do, put on his clothes, and then he turned transitioned roles. Tell us about how that was like to come in, have to prep and prepare for your treatments, and then switch roles to become a provider again.
yeah. Well,
Kind
it's
of a
funny because
Superman. It's like a Superman Clark Kent existence.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's funny because we as therapists, we're telling the patients, and we're always telling them, fill your bladder, fill your bladder.
yeah,
You have to drink anywhere 24 to 32 ounces of water, but you don't know what that actually feels like walking around with 32 ounces of water in your bladder.
yeah,
And then having to also have a bowel movement and have be empty. It's not as easy. It's not as easy as we make it out to be.
yeah.
So um, it takes a lot of. It does take a lot of timing and preparation, and um, so you're sort of walking a fine line there with your bladder because I found that after several weeks of the treatment that it's kind of difficult to be able to hold your bladder because for some reason when you have to go, you got to go.
Yeah, no doubt. And then tell me about that transition point, when you go into the telephone booth and then you got to put on your now
Right.
become the provider.
Right. So after I jump off the table, I run, I clock in, and then I'm back at the machine. And it's just it what helped me was, of course, I work with a great group of people, you know, And so they gave me a chance to be able to do what I needed to do and come back to work.
And one of the things that I tell patients all the time, and it's just a word, it's called fatigue. And we just kind of talk about it and then everybody forgets about it. You're working full time, you're having your treatments and then you switch roles. And then I would look at you some days and you were sort of like really dragging and, tell us about how that affected you in your day-to-day work life.
So fatigue is a real thing. I mean, there was one day that it really affected me, and I said I was at the machine and I got so tired. I mean, I had such a profound tiredness that I I told my partners that I was just going to go home because I was exhausted. You know, I hit a wall,
Yeah.
and so I came home and I crawled into bed. I must have slept for about 4 hours, you know, and I worry. I got my wife was really worried about me, because I got up. I think I ate something, and I went back to bed. I took the next day off, and um, yeah, it's a fatigue it hit me hard that one couple of days, that 1 week actually, um, because I think it was up my third week into the treatments.
Yeah, and
And
that really gave you a perspective, right? Something
Mhm.
as seems as innocuous as just being tired. And now when your patients tell you every day how tired they are, you
Yeah.
felt it. You
Oh yeah.
you traveled down that road. So
Mhm.
again, hats off to you. Um,
Yeah.
there's one last piece of the puzzle that I want to kind of talk about. And that's, the bilateral difficulty it must have been, to actually it was probably harder for us to treat you than you to have been treated by us. We see you as our, sort of somebody, as I said, the glue to the department. Angel, David's, laugh. I mean, I crack up every time I hear him laugh. He has the most joyful laugh. And when something funny is happening, you hear people laughing and you hear David's laugh above all the others. And, to have one of our comrades, one of our leadership comrades, somebody that is, one of the elders, right? The elders of the church, right? The elders of the department,
Mhm.
take a hit, it hits us all very profoundly. And what I said to David before we started the taping was, in a way, we never really knew how to approach you with this or tell you how much we love you or tell you how much we're proud of you or tell you how much we are pulling for you and praying for you. And I guess this podcast embodies all of that we want to extend to you. So I think it was harder for, I mean, I said my piece. Now you say yours. I think it was probably easier for you than it was for us.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it was. I mean, I know that I remember when we sat down and we spoke about how we're going to approach this, and you suggested that I go downtown to the city, and you know, and I'm like, would why would E send me to the city, you know? And I know, and I think later on you told me you just, and I guess it comes out of your relationship with me, your love for our friendship, that you just wanted to protect my privacy, and I really appreciate that sentiment, you know. But I mean, there was never a question in my mind about where I would go, So because I view our department as an extension of my family because of how much time we spent together, you know. So it was, and I have seen the quality of work that we do here. I've seen the compassion and I've seen how we go the extra mile for our patients. So where else would I go? You know.
That's so cute. So cute. Angel, you always get the last word. I mean, here's a hero, right? Here's one of our brothers in arms, and just what a great story. And I'm so glad we had a chance to tell it. Your thoughts?
What I find fascinating, and first and foremost, thank you for sharing your story. And that, people say that it's easy to express um, and relive those moments, but it's not, right? At the same token, it is in the same sentence. It's also um, stress relief because you get to also vent out that frustration and all those things that are happening. One of the things that I find fascinating about your story, which I've heard now for the first time, like everyone else, is being in the other side of the shoe, so to speak. I have a question before I make my last comment, and it's one of those questions where I know you. I don't think it's a question you wanted to have to answer, but do you feel that being in the position that you were in sort of helped you in the sense of dealing with the diagnosis, or would you say that it's just a totally different, avenue?
It has helped. It has definitely helped me, and I think that my because of that, the road I walk, the path I walk, it has it has made me a better therapist,
Mm.
because now when I'm when I'm speaking with my patient, when they're talking to me, I can actually um, empathize with their pain and what they're going through, both, physically, emotionally, spiritually, you know, and I can connect with them much better. I can connect.
I want to
The
say,
connecting with your patient is very important, because I know you've heard this before, and when they say that, it's not what you tell somebody, is how you make them feel. So when I speak, and this is one thing that I find satisfying about what I do, is because I can every every patient, I try to talk to them, and see who they are, and I ask about their lives, I ask about their work, their families, and I think that after weeks of conversing with them, um, we form a bond. There's an actual bond formed. So now, because I have gone through this, it that has it has made me that much better. You know, to be able to sympathize and empathize with what they're going through.
and lastly, this is the way I will make my comment. We heard in the beginning a description of who David was. Dr. E so eloquently put that he's like a father, that he is an amazing person. Today, we had an opportunity to really feel that. So sometimes when people express how they feel about others, it is their actions and their words that back up other people's opinions. And I think you're a great example of that, but you're even more um, a great example of how this podcast has been designed, because it's people like you that take off the stethoscope, to take off the hat of the position you're in and dive right into the patient's understanding. And I believe that in a spiritual aspect, we are not done, we're not given things by accident. And I think that what you're able to provide others moving forward is not only an amazing miracle, but it is a gift. And I am truly honored to say that we work under the same environment, the same building, and that we all work for the same, place, that we do everything in our power to make our communities healthier and brighter. And for that, I thank you.
Yeah, and David, I also wanted to just tell you that I am humbled to have had you on today, and I really appreciate you telling us your story. Thank you very much, my friend. So, Angel, in closing, I just want to say a couple of words, to sort of tie it all together with David's beautiful story. Um, there's a novel I love to read, and there's a novel that's one of my favorite by my man Hemingway. It's called For Whom the Bell Tolls, and it's about a gentleman who comes and volunteers in the Spanish Civil War back in the 1930s. And he's looking at death all around him and how people are dying and getting killed. And he doesn't really think about his own mortality until the end of the book when it is his turn. And in the beginning, there's a small little poem, and everyone is always worried, looking over their shoulder and seeing what's going on with everyone around them. And they hear the bell toll, but actually the bell is tolling for thee. And when our providers who, tirelessly work on behalf of our survivor thrivers, whether you are a doctor, a nurse, therapist, a social worker, a physical therapist, as I said, whatever, a pharmacist, a cancer pharmacist, whatever you do to provide service for our survivor thrivers, one day, and I say this all the time, it's going to be our turn to sit in that chair or to lay on that table or to undergo that knife or that procedure. And the bell tolls truly for us. And when it is our turn, to have to get on that table or go through the operation or have the infusion, I only could pray and hope that all of you out there, all of our providers have the same amount of dignity, elegance, peacefulness, spiritual belief, and confidence that David portrayed in his cancer journey and through his survivorship. So we're going to end today with our Croc prayer, using David as our as our vehicle. So I want to wish David and all of our survivor thrivers out there a long, healthy, happy, and cancer-free life. May God bless you. May God be with you, and peace.
Hey, Croc Nation. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the podcast to your friends. Visit our website, crocvip.com. We would love to hear your feedback.